Compressor is a very helpful program used to convert audio or video to file formats that you may require or you may need to increase your workflow speed when working in a certain workflow and export items for delivery. Now, the version in the Final Cut 7 suite and the new version from Final Cut 10, which you have to purchase separately for $50, are both very similar to each other. So learning one or the other will help you here. This tutorial will cover both. This tutorial I'm utilizing Compressor 4, which is the one you purchased from the App Store. So it is the latest version. As I mentioned before, it is utilized to convert either video or audio. On my screen, on the right hand side on my desktop, I have a video which is sized at 1920 by 1080, and I have an audio which is an MP3. Let's say that I am utilizing a program where I am editing program, that is, and I am going to make a 720p timeline or project, and I want to minimize my render time. Or better yet, what about if you're still using a 32-bit program like Final Cut 10 and you have to render all the time, and if you're working on a 720p timeline and you bring in the 1920 by 1080 or the 1080i or 1080p footage, is going to be extremely large and you have to sit there for quite some time and render. And keep in mind that you not only render when you bring in the footage, but every time you move it you have to re-render all the time. So mindful of that, you want to go ahead and create your project or your elements for your project the best way possible to minimize the render time. So once again, I'll select on this clip, which is again 1920 by 1080, and I will drag it to this window here. Once you do that, you will see in the center it says drag settings and destination here. Now the way this program works is you have settings, which are settings that you're trying to create for your output or delivery, and you also have a destination telling it where you want your newly created file to go. On the bottom window we have a settings window, and by the way, you can separate these windows. And here you will have settings, you'll have Apple, a folder named Apple, and then custom settings. So you can create a custom settings for yourself. I will go over that in another tutorial. I don't want to make very long tutorials. Again, these are to the point videos, so getting right to the point. So you will select on the Apple folder, and here you look for the different formats that you're looking for. So for example, if I were going to go to ProRes, for example, let's say I was working on ProRes, then you can select any of these. If you're working for the web, you can also select on that. You can also select on Apple devices, and you can select on video sharing services, so you can see here. So I'm going to go with the Apple ProRes only because it's a very popular codec that we're using now. So let's say, for example, I were to use Apple ProRes 422. I'll just select 422. I click on that and drag it into the window showing my Making the Reel episode 1.mov, which is my video. Once you drop that in there, there is a preview window on the right hand side of this program. And again, you can go ahead and select this window and move it around. So if I took that and you have a second monitor, you can do that. So again, they're very customizable windows. Here you will see a preview. Now you can select a point to start. So if I were to select this endpoint, you will do that. If I want to put an out point somewhere, you can do that as well. So if I want to put this here and put an out point, then that will also select to put an out point there. You can select the letter I and the letter O, and that will create an in and out point. That will be the only section that will be exported or converted, I should say. Now once you do that, I have told it to be Apple ProRes 422 source is the source I have here. That will be my destination, is source. Now we don't want to do that. I will go ahead, well actually I do, because that will be my destination. It will be the desktop. But if I wanted to make it something different, let's say the source was somewhere else, I'll select on the settings window, select on destinations, select on Apple, or the Apple folder has a triangle there, and you will see here one of the options is desktop. So if this was the case, I will select that and drag it to where it says source here. Now it says desktop. So it's going to create a video with just a selection I created. Here on the right hand side of this window, it says Making the Real Episode 1. That will be the name. If you wish to change the name, you can do so here. And it will be Apple ProRes 422. Now, keep in mind that I selected Apple ProRes 422, but it's still the same size that is coming in. So I don't want to do that. What I want to do is make it 720. I will select on the 422 and the inspector becomes populated. That's this window here. Okay, once you select on this window, you will see the settings. You have to select this button here where it says geometry. Once you select on geometry, that's where you change the settings, or you can go to a custom setting. The first options here says source inset, cropping, and it says crop to when they want to crop, and it says underneath that says dimensions, encoded pixels. It says frame size 1920 by 1080. That's 100% of the source because that's what we brought in. We want to change that by selecting where it says 100% of source, and then we can select whatever we want. I'm going to select up to 1280 by 720, or you can come down here and select 1280 by 720. Once you do that, it will change the setting. Once you have the setting done, you can get and select back in this window here where you have your settings and select on submit. Once I select on submit, then I may have another window come up and it will ask me to make a preset. I don't need to do any of that, so I'll just click on submit, ignore this. And what will happen is on the bottom right hand side, there's another window that says history on the top of the window, which is here. And underneath that will be the name that it had by default. Now it says create DVD. That's not what I wanted, but that's okay. That's a preset. That's not the name of the file. If you see on the desktop here in the bottom right hand side, a new clip will appear. And that is my 720p clip. Now I can select that and take it to whatever program I'm working with. And now I have a 720p clip without having to render when I bring it into my timeline, which will be the same as my clip. So that's how you minimize that. When it comes to audio, you can select on the audio file, drag that into this window. That's the new job that I selected. And now it says in the center, drag settings and destination here. Now this is an MP3. If you can see here, it's an MP3 file. And what I will do is, if I select on here, you'll see in the inspector, it says chase.mp3, which is listed here in the inspector. I want to make that an AIFF, because the program that I'm going to needs AIFF. Also, here towards the bottom of the inspector, it says that the audio is 44 hertz. We don't want that. We want 48 hertz because, again, the program may want or may prefer 48. So I want to make it AIFF and I want to make it 48. I'll go back to the settings. I will go ahead and look for an audio setting. So here you see the Apple, and I'll close this so you see what by default will be. By default, it may be closed. Select on the arrow, click on audio formats, the arrow that is for audio formats, and you'll see AAC, AC3, AIFF, and so on and so forth. Now I'll go ahead and select the AIFF, drag it here where it says drag settings and destination. Again, where is your destination? That will be source. If you don't want to be source, again, select something else. If I were to select on destinations, select on desktop, bring that in here, and I will change to that. Select on this window. So once it's select, the window is selected, you can tell it turns up dark blue or a blue. Click on submit, and down here in the history you will see the job come up. Let me click on submit here, and once you do that, you should see here it'll start appearing, and we'll wait for that to be done, which it is done. Once again, you should see an additional file on your desktop. Let me move this aside, and you will see it here. So there's my AIFF, and it says chase AIFF file. So that is our new file, and again, it's been converted. And once we bring it into the program, there's no conversion to be done, and you can work flawlessly without having to render. So that's, again, if you're utilizing the previous version of Compressor, everything I've gone through is the same thing. Thanks for visiting Making the Reel.